All right. Hello and welcome to Movie Buffs, a show that covers the best action films of all time. I'm your host, Shani B. You can find me on all the socials at Shani B Movies.
And I'm your other host, Cisco, aka Misfit Minded. You can find me on Twitter at rampage_misfit and at my movie pages at misfit_minded on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Today we're talking about the 2011 true crime film Kill the Irishman. Yes. Starring Ray Stevenson, Christopher Walken, Vincent D'Onofrio, and Val Kilmer, to name a few people. So many surprises in this one.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
If you haven't seen it, it is the biopic of real life Cleveland kingpin, the Irishman Danny Greene, and it's told across his life and it follows the rise and fall of the unions and organized crime in the city of Cleveland in the 1970s.
Yeah.
Just never saw any of that coming. So
Right.
tell me your thoughts. What did you think?
Yeah, sprawling story in all sorts of ways. But yeah, I wasn't expecting the Cleveland aspect of it. Which I guess was different than we usually see like East Coast, like New Jersey, New York, that area.
Hmm.
With this type of story, I forget what the Irishmen where they were in that. I want to say they were like traveling though a lot in that one. But yeah, anyways, the Midwest portion of this definitely took me by surprise. Also Danny Greene is an NBA player, so that was like kind of distracting.
That's
um
awesome.
yeah, so not the basketball player Danny Greene, the ex mobster. So yeah, I mean, I'd never seen this before. Like that's and I, rest in peace, Ray Stevenson. That's kind of why I wanted to do this, kind of as a tribute because, um, he just passed away, and this is like one of his leading roles. I would say, like when you look him up. And
It's
so
rare.
yeah, it's rare that he's a leading man. It's like this, and he did a Punisher movie. Um, and then he was in RRR. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that Punisher either, even though Twitter is trying to convince me that that's actually a good movie. Uh,
Always.
yeah. But yeah, I think there's elements that are good in it, but it's mostly like skippable for me. Like this is like a perfect like streaming on Tubi movie or something like that.
Yes.
Do with that with what you want. There's a lot of cameos. It moves very quickly. I would say oftentimes a little too quickly to
Yes.
where they're like fast forwarding through. I mean, all of Linda Cardellini stuff, I felt really bad because it's just like, let's get back to the gangster stuff and just fast forward her being pregnant, fast forward their relationship.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
It was really awkward how this movie kind of unfolded, and I agree. I love a good period piece, but I'm not sure that I like if this was in the theaters, I think I still would have been like, just
Yeah.
it doesn't have a great pull right off of the I guess like right off of the cover. It just kind of looks a little bit generic, which is
Yep.
why I'm with you. I totally thought it was just gonna be one of the cities we know. So the Cleveland aspect definitely got me listening a little bit more intently,
Mhm.
but, yeah, yeah, I
It
go
yeah.
ahead, go ahead.
It's like one like even on the cover here, like literally all the three people that are on the cover are maybe have a total of like 10 minutes of screen time like together.
Yeah,
And Ray Stevenson as a star is all the way in the back here. Like so
not great.
it's one of those where it's just like they pop in, do a little scene. I thought they really shamelessly tried to copy Goodfellas in a lot of ways, especially like the first hour. Like
Yeah.
you might as well have just opened it like I always wanted to be a gangster or something. Like it was just the narration from Val Kilmer for some reason. I like don't know
Yeah,
why they
like
went with that choice. It was very
mhm.
strange. Like we don't know like really much about him, and it takes itself so seriously. Like I feel like that's one thing that like people can't copy. Like you can copy the format of the Scorsese gangster film, but all of his movies have such memorable characters that are like quotable lines, like you know their names, and like I just felt like this one was just like missing where I was like, wait, who is that again? Like there was just so many characters. I was kind of struggling, and like I was thinking the perfect person that could have done this was Guy Ritchie. I think he could have killed the story
Yeah.
because he is so good at like taking that type of format and like this is such a. I mean, if I watched the trailer too, which like I don't know, like should we play it on here?
We
Have you seen it?
should. I haven't
Should
seen
we try
it,
this?
but
Okay.
I would yeah, let's try it. Go for it.
All right. I'm gonna try something. Um. All right. Yeah. Share screen.
Let's
Uh,
go.
because like I watched the trailer. Like my point is like I watched the trailer and the movie that they promised me um
Was not
was
in that.
not no. So I was like, okay, let's see.
Yes, here we go.
Is it going? Is it
Oh,
oh
it almost did.
add to stream. Okay, hold on.
Let's
Let me go to
go.
YouTube. And I felt like even like the way they cut the trailer was like kind of in a way that Guy Ritchie would, do like one
Yeah,
of
like
his movies.
it was definitely a kind of movie where if he was in charge, the kind of Danny Greene that he would have given us would have been close to what this guy is supposedly supposed to be like. I mean, I think my biggest takeaway from this is whoever this Danny Greene guy was, he sounds like he was wild. He sounds like
Right.
he did not give a fuck. Working out in the park with a gun on him and people shooting at him multiple times. This guy does not give a shit about dying. And I feel like that was kind of nice for Stevenson to get to play that kind of role and just be like completely unafraid, even though he's supposed to have been a young guy when he met Cardellini and he looks 50 years older than her. And then when he meets Laura Ramsey, he's like 60 years older than her. So a couple of issues with this Danny Greene guy and how they brought him to the screen. But I guess the myth of this dude, the legend of this dude, that was pretty cool.
All right. It's on the stream. You see that? You see this now?
Yes, holy shit, this is so fun. Okay, go.
Okay. I want you like tell me this doesn't look like a better movie than what we got. All right, let's see. Let me know if you can hear it too.
Okay.
Good?
I don't hear anything, but I can see.
Ah, damn it.
All
Hmm.
right. We tried. We'll figure this out,
Damn it, that sucks.
but at least we know that you can share that like that now.
I know. All right, well, whatever. Yeah, the main point is they made it seem like this kind of like caper of like no one can kill this guy.
Oh,
And
really?
yes, and like it doesn't really get to that story. I checked because I like paused it because I was waiting for that to happen. It's not until an hour into the movie, in this like 2 hour movie, when they get to that plot line. So I was kind of like just confused that like why again like the first half is like just setting up this like backstory of this guy I've never heard of before. And it's
Yes.
like if you're gonna do that, I mean, I don't know. It was
Go all the way, you know? Like,
yeah.
they were painting by numbers, like you say. They were doing all of the right things like the Scorsese movie does, but they didn't have the groundedness because they were, like, cosplaying all of it. And, you know, his hairpiece is the best example of,
Oh
like, why
man.
this was
The
such a
budget.
cosplay adventure. Yeah.
I
Like, the
mean,
color
it's
was ambitious, things were crisp, but the strings, you could see the
I
strings
mean, the
too well.
period piece of it all was not there, like, either. Like, I
It's too
never
hard.
believe I'm like, "What decade are we in?" Like, and then they don't begin with, like, saying the years, but then, like, again, like, halfway through, they start putting the years in.
Yep.
And I was like, "Okay, like, this is" yeah, some of the hairstyles and stuff, I'm like, "That definitely doesn't look 60s and 70s," like, at
It's
least
true.
what
They strung it together as best as they could, but it does not have enough behind what this story needed because the amount of car explosions were happening in Cleveland IRL and that this movie tried to like help us understand
yeah.
alone, I was like, dang, you can't. This story is it's unable to do it justice with the amount of money they were playing with.
Yeah, I think yeah, the budget definitely hurt it too. And just yeah, I think the biggest like gripe, I'm going back to it,
Yes.
is just like with Goodfellas, like Ray Liotta in that movie is not like I guess Ray Stevenson in this movie is like a superhero, and it's like that could be a good thing, but then there's also no depth to him at all. Like you don't know what he
Why he's
wants,
this way.
why yes,
Mhm.
like he has like all these like jokes about the different like like the Italians and the
Yeah.
Polacks and stuff like that. But that's really like all of like the characterization you get out of this guy, and that he like loves these younger women.
Yeah,
And,
yeah, yeah,
and that
somehow he's a ladies' man at the same time.
so
Cardellini, like, making chemistry out of nothing is maybe the
uh
best thing I've seen in a while. Because
she's
you
so
know, you
good.
and I, we are always upset when there are no good sex scenes in movies, so there was a sneak one in this one with Cardellini, you know, no party favors, but then the, like, very awkward sex scene later
Turn
in the
this off.
movie where Laura Ramsey comes through and just all of a sudden is like, "Oh, here are my boobs." I was like, "Whoa, you're supposed to be in that Boy Witch movie, The Covenant. Put your boobs away. Don't show
Oh, is
them
that
to
where
him.
she's
He's
from? I was trying to
way
figure
too
out. I'm
old."
like, I think I've seen her somewhere, but
She's actually from She's the Man. She is the
see,
gala
I haven't
Leah
seen
that
that. Yeah.
Amanda Bynes is doing. You gotta, yeah,
But the
Megan,
way
you have to see that movie. I'm so sorry to intrude on this, but you need to go
no,
get yourself
okay.
some She's the Man on Hulu right now. Sorry,
I
go
feel
ahead.
like this has become like a recurring segment now of like the sex scene breakdown, but they're always so
Good.
fascinating. And so not the sex scene, but like the boob shot, whatever you want to call it, at like for this that actress, um was edited so weird. Like it was almost like she was surprised, like, oops,
Yeah. Yeah.
like my boobs fell out.
I don't understand. I don't know
It
what to
wasn't
do.
like I wonder what her direction was. It wasn't like, "Come
Yes.
get this." It wasn't like it was just like it's just blank face with like tits out, and I was just like,
Yeah,
"This
even
is so
her.
awkward."
I feel like as an actor, you could, like, tell that she was sort of like, "Yeah, I'm just trying my best to do whatever this scene is asking for. I
I
don't know
know.
what it's asking for." But I think to your point, like, there was a real it was easy to sort of see that the direction wasn't as strong as the
Yeah.
story needed it to be. Because somehow I will buy that women want to fuck Jack Nicholson forever. I'll buy that, but I
Or
couldn't really buy.
a powerful person in general.
Yeah. Yeah,
But
I can't buy that she's into him at all after he's already had a wife and family, like, how no way, I can't buy it at all.
yeah, it's like I just feel like it's almost like PR for Danny Green, it felt like at some points, where it's just like anytime something could make him look bad, they like go the safe route and like just
Yeah.
like renege on it. And it's like, what? Like, that was interesting. Like, him and Linda Cardellini, like, of course, there's a bunch of nagging wife tropes or whatever, but it's like there's no beef, no tension, no drama, like no nothing. Like it's not like again, Goodfellas, that's the template. Like that's
Mm.
him and Karen like having all those hilarious and like just crazy
Passionate
fights.
scenes,
Yeah.
yes, right, it's like the palpable heat of a person who basically lives in a survival state is a big piece of the mob movie,
Yeah.
and even though the mob is a huge part of what's going on in this movie, I agree, I just don't feel that here.
hmm Yeah, it's and then yeah, the Linda Cardellini, like the first night they meet, they're hooking up in the alley behind her
Well,
restaurant. I
this
mean, just
her
ludicrous. Just ludicrous.
fully
uh,
ludicrous. Yes. Yeah, her being able I guess, like, it's a testament to her as an actress because she really I can't believe she was like, "What's" she marched over and was all, "I'm gonna make this happen," which I don't understand, but I think that is more in the storytelling visually, is that, like, we didn't also get to see that thing where, like, the town actually looked at Danny Green as much as the camera was trying to make us think they did. You know, like, they would give us that low shot of, like, him and his boys walking across the street to tell the biker gang guy to, like, quit partying, and it just felt like it's 4 dudes crossing the street. There's no people in the neighborhood really into this,
yeah, it
even though the
definitely felt
camera wants me to believe it.
like even when there was extras on set, it was like so limited. Like there was one scene in particular, I was like laughing so hard where Val Kilmer is talking with it. Like they have a couple sit downs or whatever,
Mhm.
together, and there's one where it's supposed to be like this grand like festival in the park, and it's like they just rounded up like 20 people and told them to like dance or whatever.
Yeah, they're like, "Stay in the frame, stay in the frame." Oh my
Because but the
gosh.
way they if they had just like moved the camera a little bit more, because you just see like half of it is empty field and the other half is like the 20 people. Yeah, the camera work, that's the thing too. If you're going to copy Scorsese, like the camera work was so boring. It's like
Well,
the,
it says a lot about how the camera work is not just the camera work. That's like another reason why I love talking about action movies with you and talking about movies in general is that it's so easy to think that you can just copy a Scorsese shot and you'll get the same result. And that just like isn't how it works.
and they don't even try. It's like a lot of it is just people sitting down and talking, and it's like over the shoulder cut, reaction cut. Like it was, I'm
Yeah,
like,
like
oh
barely any inserts in meaningful ways, no
no.
fun momentum
There
with the
was one like
filmmaking.
tracking shot where you could tell like they were trying to do like that kind of the Coca Cabana. I think it was the Christopher Walken first introduction, which I thought he was one of the best cameos in this. I love like
Hell yeah.
his literally his first line. He was like, "This beef stroganoff, you got to try this." Like,
And that's what
and
you're
feeds
supposed to
them some
bring.
yes, and it's like that's a memorable part of this movie that like I'll never forget now. And like I couldn't really tell you all the other mob guys really apart. Like we'll get into some of the other camp. Like there were some other decent ones, but I mean,
Mm.
even like the Val Kilmer stuff that they're trying to set up, like I didn't really get any meaningful.
Just, like,
Um,
totally underused. They barely used him at all, and when they did, he was like a weird narrator who was somehow still one-dimensional.
and I just think he's miscast. Honest, like I'm sorry. Like this period of his career is like I love
It's a
Val
little
Kilmer, and
random.
I feel bad for what's happened or whatever. But like this is not the best time in his career. And like just fully not giving a shit on the narration, and even like some of his dialogue, I like he barely could say the sentence. Like I was like reading it off the captions more than I was hearing him say it. I
Mhm.
was just like,
Mhm.
yeah, this wasn't. You really needed if you're going to do. I think that was another problem was the POV, because it's like you're getting his narration, but then this is like clearly from Danny Greene's perspective, I guess.
Mhm.
But then he like dies at the end, and there's really no one to like. I mean, spoilers, I guess. Oh, sorry.
Oh, come on, guys. We all know.
But then there's no one to like commemorate. I guess like pretty much every plot twist of this movie too is so predictable. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
he's dead. Oh, explosion here. Oh, like,
Yeah.
jeez. It
I
was
just
very
also
predictable.
it seemed like one of those things where they used all the paint by number stuff that the other films have, but because they didn't get to do any of the other stuff, it did feel unfulfilling.
Mhm.
Like it was just sort of like, oh, it's capped. Like for a year there were like 60 bombings in Cleveland because the mob was all killing each other, but like now it's just over. Like there wasn't any like love letter to Cleveland the way that in other mob movies there is a love letter to whatever city they're in.
And I was kind of struggling with the Cleveland part in some respects, because in Goodfellas, you understand why someone would get drawn into this lifestyle. I mean,
Yes.
like he says, always wanted to as a kid, looking up to these guys. That's what his influence was. But it just seems like Danny Greene is his own man. Like, and he like no one can influence him. And so it's just like weird. And like it's not like they're living in this rich mansion. Like his house is kind of shitty. Like the house that he gets with Linda Cardellini, like it's kind of a dump, and it's in this bad neighborhood.
Yeah, it's true, he doesn't give a shit, he lives in a shitty
Yeah.
neighborhood, and he's so exposed, it's easy for people to just blow his shit up whenever they feel like it, like,
It
it
gets
does
kind of funny how
seem
many explosions he
yeah, for him being the
survives.
star of this movie, it does seem like we don't really spend any time with him in a meaningful way somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, we can get into our I feel
Yeah,
like
like,
we've
what are
been shitting
your
on this, but like as far as the major plot holes are questions, I guess it would be the car bomb, like the amount of car bombings, because there was a lot of good ones. I will say that. Like we'll get into that more with like when we get into specifics action wise, but it's just like after a while, like I probably just wouldn't drive. You know what I mean? It doesn't seem like a huge city. Like
Yeah.
maybe get a bike or like I don't know, take the bus or something.
Or,
It
like,
just seems
some sort
like
of better strategy. I also feel like
yeah.
that everyone's strategy was just like, "Nah, I'm just gonna go ahead and believe my car is safe." That like, what plan is
Yeah.
that? That's not a real plan.
Yeah. And then the other one, like, again, another reoccurring theme was just the ladies piece of it. It's just I mean, even the second one was just like like really bad because it was just like this looks like his daughter or something. Like it was just so creepy to me, and like
It
the way that
really
he like
did.
stalks her at work. It's like first the night before he's like, "What time do you open?" She's like 6, and he's like, "All right." Drives away, comes back at 6, and I'm like, that is not okay. Like that,
No. It's
that's
very
just her.
creepy.
That's harassment. And she eventually like she goes with him or whatever, but yeah, and they get married.
Yeah, I
But
mean, that is the standard of this thing is that, like, again, there's no substance to that. They couldn't make me believe it, but I think IRL, there's charisma that explains that stuff, and the best guys that have played, like, mob dudes or this type of dude, they find a way to capture it, and so I just feel like this movie requires an important director because when you're gonna do, like, a literal gritty period piece of any kind or, like, a true biopic, you have to be collaborating with a director. Like, there has to be a visual or a visible collaboration between the star of this movie and the director, and I feel like you can see
and the
conversations.
cinematographer, and it
Yes,
just seemed like
exactly.
the lighting looked like made it look so cheap, I feel like you were talking about, like, the color grading and stuff, like, it made it look like a soap opera to me a lot
It
of different
looked
times.
like they fixed a
Yeah.
lot in post, and I feel like
Yeah.
I am always a sucker for bright color in post, but when that isn't a choice, and I think, like, when I
Mhm.
first keyed this movie up, I was like, "Oh, this might be a fun choice." Like, this movie is maybe cheaply made, but creative in the filmmaking, and then it just, like, dropped out completely and became very boring.
Yeah. Yeah, any big things that got in the way for you other than what we talked about so far? I feel like we talked about it a lot already, but
Yes, yeah, we mostly nailed all the comments I have about this movie, minus, like, I definitely the score being a goofy Irish influence score was, like,
oh,
pretty
yeah.
hard to swallow
And then you
because
could
I was like, "Jesus, these bagpipes, dude."
yeah, it's like you compare it to, like I was thinking of, like, Departed, and they play what's that song they play, like, all the NFL games now, in that, and it's become, like, a
Oh,
joke.
the shipping up to Boston one?
Shipping up
Is
to
it like that?
Boston, yeah, and it's like, what in that period, it was, like, cool, but, like, now it's, like, almost become a joke to kinda play that type of,
Yes.
yeah, super Irish stuff to I will say though, that was one of the to give some compliments, 'cause I feel we've been pretty harsh so far. The finale, like when he finally does bite the bullet, and it's like that slow music, somber music. He gets the poem from his friend or whatever in the mail.
Mhm.
Um, and then he's talking to that kid or whatever. And I was like, okay, this is like some interesting stuff that's building on his character and like this persona that everyone in Cleveland like has around him, like that we haven't really
Mhm.
seen in the entire movie, but they wait until like the last 20 minutes. So
Exactly. Just
yeah,
weirdly organized in that way and
yeah.
just too flat. Yeah, yeah. But I mean, like to talk about the filmmaker a little bit more, I feel like this guy is kind of a writer director. Like
Hmm.
he at least wrote some movies I like. He did write Die Hard with a Vengeance, the original
Oh
Jumanji, love
man,
that. Fucking Armageddon, like
Die Hard with a
The
Vengeance though
Saint.
is so good. God, it's
It's
like
true.
it's up there with the first one. It's on par with to me.
Yes.
I love
Yes,
Die
I
Hard with a
agree.
Vengeance.
Me
And
too.
then Armageddon, I actually just found that at the bookstore too, where I got Kill the Irishman,
Let's go.
the out of print Criterion edition, which I was like, oh shit,
Wow, that is a
yeah,
collector's item.
yeah,
Nice.
yeah, it was cool. I'm like the only other Bay one they have in the Criterion collection, which I'll still look out for is the Rock. I don't have that one yet.
Dude, The
Um,
Rock is so friggin' good. We're gonna do that. We gotta do
And
that
those
with
were
you
some of
soon.
the earliest, like they would never do that anymore because like action
No.
is not Criterion, but like they're so old, like those are DVDs. Those aren't even Blu-ray. Like those so the
We might be able
Armageddon two
to
disc DVD. But I do like that movie. That's one of the bays I like. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, like, the story of those movies is good, but they're to the point of directors really mattering here. It's like the director, like Michael Bay having Armageddon takes Armageddon from being just a kinda basic story about a ragtag group to, like,
It
everyone
becomes a
crying in
Bay
the end.
movie. Yeah,
Exactly, exactly.
and then he also, wrote and directed The Punisher with Thomas Jane, not the Ray Stevenson one, so that's an interesting connection there because
Yeah.
I think that's a better movie, and I think Thomas Jane was a better Punisher, to be honest.
Yeah,
But
it's unfortunate, but I agree,
yeah,
I did like that '04 one better.
yeah. It's just like the sequel just got, like, too cartoony and, like, just the tone was just, like it was almost on the other side, like, way too,
It was in
um
that limbo period where we weren't sure how our superhero movies were gonna, like, really land on the ground in a way where we could
mhm,
do the dark ones and the light ones, and I just feel
yeah.
like that, like, oh thousands
Before
is, like, a
Deadpool, like,
learning curve.
cracked the code. Yeah,
Yes, exactly,
exactly, yeah.
exactly.
But yeah, getting into the action of this movie now then too, what sequences stood out to you, in particular?
Well, I mean, I really did like the way that he punched everybody all the time, slapped people and stuff, so
I
I
was gonna
did
say that.
appreciate, yeah, the Foley, sound effect of him punching and slapping, particularly his boss that one time is
At the
good,
Union, at
and
the Union guy, yeah, who is
hell yeah.
the warden from Shawshank Redemption, who's, like, always a bastard. Whenever you see him in a movie or something, I'm always like, "Oh!" So I
Yeah,
wasn't
fuck
mad
that
that
guy.
he, like, smacked him and humiliated him.
Yes.
Um, but
Yes,
yeah, I
the
think that's to our character point. Okay, that's one thing. He's a man of honor. He would rather punch someone out. And then, like, when he sends his goon, this was like
mhm.
immediately before that scene when he sends he says he's gonna bring a lot, like he says send people or whatever, and it's only just that one guy, which I
Yeah,
thought was funny too. But yeah, instead of that guy was gonna shoot him, he like talks him into a fist fight, and then he just wipes the floor with him. It really was an
yeah,
interesting fight,
so
but
good.
but yeah, like the whole movie, he'd rather punch his way out of a situation than shoot or bomb or whatever. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, because I feel like bombs are just so hard to beat, so it was a little bit of a, like, hot and cold in the sense that people were either gonna get blown up and be murdered immediately, or he was gonna just beat the shit out of them, and they might come back around again and get the shit beat out of them before he blows them up, so, I guess, like, I like those the sequences where it was, like, more funny and more character driven for sure. Yeah, like, just beating everybody up to try to force the garbage men to join their union was pretty
yeah,
funny.
that was pretty
Uh,
dope.
and, like, yeah, like, just trying to make the most of the pieces that should have been action, I think I appreciated, because I guess I expected more action, frankly. I know
So did
there still
I. I
was,
know.
but,
For movie buffs, this isn't I wouldn't say this is movie buffs approved.
hey, this
Not
happens
to step on it.
sometimes.
But that's why yeah, that's why I like. This was the first time it worked out when we did Blood In, Blood Out. I actually thought that was pretty good.
Mhm.
First time watch that we took a chance on. So, this one I like that garbage scene too because like they're throwing trash on all of them. So it's like in case you didn't know these were the garbage guys.
Yes.
And there's that one guy that's like, "All right, I'll agree to it. I'll agree to it." And they just continue to beat the
Yes.
shit out of
Yeah,
him.
just like a little all these instances where they could bring that grit in, but just not really being able to do much more than have fun with it. And I guess like of course as an action fan, I want the violence and I want the fun, but I was hoping for that violence to be a little bit more in tune with and in line with the storytelling proper. And you win some and you lose some. This
Yeah.
some of our first time watches we're gonna nosedive on. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, and, or even, like, sometimes when we did, the Purge sequel, I remembered it being a lot better the first time I saw it than on rewatch, so sometimes that happens too.
Ah,
Um,
man, and with a good franchise, if there's, like, a weird one in the middle, it's a lot easier to slide past, but
forget
a movie like this that's never gonna get a sequel, it is kind of it's at least we saw it.
Yeah, and for me, I had the bombings, like, montage just because, like we said, there's so many, like, different ones, and when they showed, like, the news footage, about, like, how many bombings there were, like, and how many, like, deaths that came, the Vincent D'Onofrio one, again, that was one I predicted, like, as soon as they stopped talking, when he's like, "All right, we're about to do this, bro." I was like, "Oh, he's dead." It was like so cheap, and then like his cheesy like army scene death where he's like on the floor like
Yeah.
but
Yeah, they didn't have enough, special effects for that shit to, like, look as cool
no.
as it could've. Mhm.
um but like the entire yeah, but like I think the what is it, the sum is greater than the parts or whatever, so like that whole montage was
Yes.
as a whole I thought was like effective in showing like wow, this was like a huge thing. It got on the news. I will say when they showed the news segment, one part I was like, okay, like the editor did not. Every single news segment, it was like the same news guy, and it was like reporting to you from Channel 4. This is Robert blah blah blah, and I was like, did we have to include that for every single news? Who is this guy? Is he essential to the plot? Like,
Nobody's on screen more than many people who
I
were. Yeah, I guess, like,
know.
that's the hard part about making these movies. It's really hard to know how much of each piece to use, and that's why the masters are the masters. Because like, I don't really
Yeah,
know how Scorsese makes a 2.5-hour movie, and I'm like, "Wasn't that only 30 minutes? Can't I watch 3 more
or
hours of
three
this?"
three plus. Like Irishman is up there. Wolf of
Wolf
Wall
of Wall
Street is up
Street.
there. I will say like we're being harsh. This isn't like Gotti level bad. This isn't
No.
like John like where it's just like incompetent filmmaking on every level and screenwriting. It's like this is like just we've seen the prime rib and this is just like mid. Like
Yeah,
this is
this
like
is the diner steak, like,
yes.
I know it still came from a cow and stuff, but it came from a boring cow.
Yep, exactly. So
Yeah, tell me about, your vibe on the performances, though. I know we talked a little bit about Val and D'Onofrio, but what did you think of everyone's accents? Because I know you've
oh,
got
the
some
accents were all
Midwestern
over the place,
vibes.
dude. I was like, I didn't know there was sometimes like where that's what I wanted to talk about. Ray Stevenson, I will say too, is pretty good too as this character. Just like his physical performance, like
Yes.
they show the real Danny Green at the end, and he's like this towering, like just
Yeah,
scary
dude.
looking dude, like you would not want to mess with. And Ray Stevenson is that. So I think like in that regard, like he nails it. And some of those like sit down scenes where he's like holding his own, definitely capable in that. But it's just like we're saying the writing. It's just like it only takes them so far. And it's the same with all of these cameos. Christopher Walken. I did think like his car explosion scene was one of the better ones too. Just because like of course church breaks out right when they're about to do it, and it's next to a
Yes.
church, and he has to go and save the little girl from or old lady or whatever
Yep.
from getting hit, and then Christopher Walken like sees him, and I'm thinking like he's not gonna get in the car,
Same.
and so I thought that sequence could have even been like more suspenseful where they drew it. Is he going to do it? Is he not? And then all of a sudden, Christopher Walken is like blown back like 50 feet.
It's awesome. Yeah, I was like, "Oh, shit." I was expecting more of that, like, Scarface thing where, they have to do the give and take of trying to figure
Good
out how to,
call.
like, be
Yes.
a good guy when they blow stuff up in the middle of a city.
Yeah, where and that's Scarface's code. No kids. I said no women, no kids.
Dude,
um,
yes. Yeah, like, there's so much, influence from all of the greats here and all the good films here, and I think the great actors that are here definitely keep it afloat for sure. It's just, like, we didn't really get enough of them, like, for as much of D'Onofrio as we got, we, like, still, in my opinion, didn't get enough, and we got, like, barely any Val, and he was weirdly cast, like, just it was
mm.
so hard to contain all of the
Well, and the
people the
cops,
way I
the c-
wanted.
the cops didn't play any threat. Like that's what I'm saying with the suspense part of it or drama part of
No.
it. It was just like I used to play baseball with this guy when we were kids.
Yeah,
And it's
people
just like
say we're
right,
in
it's like
cahoots, but I
yeah,
don't care about that.
yeah. He's just at the bar like, "You can't pay for my tab because 'cause I'm a good cop." And it was just like, "All right, well, you're letting him get away with, like, murder still
Yes,
and bombings, so are you a good cop, though?"
that's a
Seems
good
like,
point. Yeah, I was
like
waiting for him to turn, like, state's witness or some shit because him and Val were friends, and we just, like, never did that.
yeah. I guess the only other ones, Robert Davi is always reliable as a bad guy. from the Goonies, one of the henchmen from the Goonies.
Yes.
But he plays like the hitman they bring in to take care of Danny Greene, and that was like we'll get into it, but that whole sequence I thought is like when it stepped up in terms of
Yeah.
suspense and like oh shit, he's in trouble now.
Mhm.
Um, Steve Sharippa, who's a Sopranos vet. Also he has a Talking Sopranos podcast out right now.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it was cool to see him show up, and I think his like little his performance and cameo was pretty well done too, where he was like the one garbage guy that held out. Like
Yes.
I built this for myself. He kind of like aligned in Danny with that way, and Danny was like, I like him because of that. Like
Yeah,
I
tried to
thought
protect him and everything.
yeah, I thought that was well done. And then to like he had to take him out with the one shot headshot, which was pretty dope.
Yeah.
Uh, and then Paul Sorvino, speaking of Goodfellas, as Paulie and Goodfellas showing up here with his black hair dye,
The classic look, you
super
know
black.
it. Yep, it's the classic Sorvino look. He wore it for 60 years probably straight.
Oh man! And then the last one, I was like, I know that guy from somewhere. I can't put my finger on it. The guy who was like he told him not to gamble, who they had to
Yeah.
blow up in
Oh,
the
he was on Ozark most
yep,
recently. He was the
Jason
FBI
Jason
agent.
Jason Butler Harner. I wrote it down, and yeah, from Ozark. So
Nice.
what about you? And you keep talking. I have to grab my charger. So you
Okay, grab
keep
your
going.
charger. Yes, please. Yeah, I think the cameos were done really well. Also, I feel like the cameos were maybe the my favorite part of this. And at a certain point, I was sort of like, who else is in this movie that I had no idea was gonna be here? So I was really excited when Vinnie Jones came. And again, to bring the Guy Ritchie of it all back to the center, Vinnie Jones was here and even he was sort of like, I'm trying to bring this, I'm giving it, but we didn't even get enough of him either. So I think I was excited for him to be there. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like I can't pick a favorite because everyone who came in the cameos understood the assignment and did, what they should to try to help this story. I guess to help this story along, but it didn't really feel like anyone was in charge of the pace, so they just kind of came and went.
Yeah, I mean exactly what you said. I was here for the whole thing. Uh, But yeah, Guy Ritchie. I see you put down Vinnie Jones. That was the other guy too from a lot of the Guy Ritchie movies. It was good to see him, and he had like just his accent. I love his accent. All the movies too.
Yeah.
So
And we did get to see a little bit of a performance out of him that I thought was kind of surprising that like in this one because Danny had a like moral code and all of his friends were like they truly were like we're brothers but not the way in other mob movies it has looked so far. He
mhm.
really did look like upset and nervous when he thought that things were starting to go sideways. Like I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh wow, he has some authentic real moments happening here." So I think if I had to pick, he's probably my favorite part. He
Okay.
never really gets to be front and center, and I oh man, I almost wish that we need to find him like the best front and center because I know he has been, but not in a way where he
His
could give me what he gave me here.
his death too was like particularly like brutal. I felt like where he sees the Cadillac and he's like, "Oh, Danny!"
I
Boom,
know.
shotgun into the bushes. I was like, "Oh man."
Yeah,
Did
that was a
not
cool one.
That was a cool one. That's definitely going to be in the running here for stunts. So let's just get into it right now. What's stunts for your favorite?
Well, I think like the basic ones. I love a good pencil through the hand. I
Oh yeah, you could
love
see.
yeah, I love like trying to do some of the explosion stuff, but I think just the basic stunts of like the stage combat of it all is really like where I was like, "Oh, this is the impressive piece." We don't always get to see that kind of stuff. We're usually like much bigger. So, from the smaller vantage point, I think just that little stuff like I guess the stage combat in this because there's so much punching and kicking. That really is impressive. Or I mean, punching and slapping.
I think because though we watch so many like choreographed movies that it's like it's hard for me to, take the slow like seriously.
It's true. The
Um,
basic, realistic fighting, I'm not even
yeah,
really sure if I could identify it anymore.
I we're in too deep at this point. like we're undercover. I think I just have to go with the bombings. Like it was almost sometimes a lot of times I was like, man, this was pretty impressive. Like, did they spend most of their budget on the explosions?
I think they did. I think
Because
the
the
answer is yes.
bombings, out of all of the visual, like, shit that we gave it, I will say the bombings looked pretty great. Like all there was some CGI fire stuff, like in the, I would say like the first bombing, like when his car radio and stuff, that looked a little fake.
Mhm.
But in terms of just like anytime someone getting their car, I thought all those were the best stunt wise.
It's true. I think they definitely put most of their money into that, and I think you kind of have to, like, this
Yeah.
movie is a great example of how even when you have a lot of good pieces to work with, how, like, having to figure out a way to work the budget is maybe, like, what is the barrier to a good movie sometimes.
And it's good, and it's possible to have a low budget good gangster movie. Like we've seen
Mhm,
it before many times. It's just like, what's going to be that difference maker? Is it going to be the star of the movie? Is it the story? Is it the director? Is it all three kind of
mhm.
working together? um so yeah, it's just, this one had a lot of ingredients. I just like all together didn't really mesh as well as it could have for me.
For sure,
But
for sure. Yeah, what about kills? What about which of the kills really stood out to you? Because a lot of people got blown up, but which one meant something?
that's a good question. I mean, I like the like we were talking about, the shotgun to the bushes, I thought was like really effective. Now that we've talked about it though, I think I'll change what I was gonna say. I think
Ooh.
when they blew up, well, it's still a car bombing, I guess, but like where he had to make the choice to kill the gambler who was under the car, because again, that was like, okay, there's some stakes here. This guy is gonna gamble again. When as soon as he told him not to gamble anymore, where that was gonna head. But I did not expect that he would have to kill him like himself, I guess, necessarily. So that was kind of like a different spin on the car bombings. I don't think I've ever seen a car bombing where someone was under the car. I thought that made it like extra brutal to
Yeah.
think about. So yeah, I think that one. I thought that was a pretty honorable mention to the one. I think it was in the montage too, where the guy opens the mailbox and gets the shrapnel too to the chest. That was
Oh.
pretty graphic too. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
What
good,
about
that
you?
was good. Yeah, I think for me, I just like the very classic kill of when D'Onofrio is trying to prove his loyalty to Danny, and so he's just like, "Here, let me pap my trunk," and then just stabs that dude a bunch of times in the trunk and
That
is like, "We're in cahoots now, it's you and me, guy." That was good. I
That
was into
was
that.
tough for me though, because that was a legit kid. Like that was a teenager, and I was like,
Yeah,
even in Goodfellas, when they're stabbing the guy in the trunk, they don't show the guy in the trunk, and it's not a kid. So I hate to keep making comparisons to Goodfellas, but it's like there's a reason why there's some masters to it, like Scorsese in the choices they make, in De
mhm.
Palma with Scarface. This, yeah, on the cover here, the tagline, it's funny. It says the best gangster film since Goodfellas. I cannot agree with
Ooh,
that.
don't do that. Don't do that,
Yeah.
studio people.
Do
Well,
not.
I wouldn't say it's the best, but it is certainly a gangster movie
Yeah.
since Goodfellas, so there's
All
that.
right. There was a whole 20-year period of gangster movies from Tarantino and Guy Ritchie
Yeah,
that I would probably put ahead of this one. So,
I think so. Yeah, we have to do it, we didn't really we I've talked about some Guy Ritchie movies, and we've talked about his newer movie,
The
but
Covenant,
this movie in particular really did make me hungry for him, like, seeing one of his
he
trademark
would have been
actors and
perfect. He would have been so
yeah.
good for this movie.
Mhm.
Or I was thinking Scorsese too, because when it got to the end and they mentioned Jimmy the Weasel, something like that at the end.
Mhm.
I was like, okay, I know that name from somewhere. Then they showed the clip of Vegas, and I was like, okay, casino. That was the
Yes.
casino. So I was like, so maybe Scorsese did this the larger scale story, because this was like this
Yeah,
story leads into the national busting of all the crime families. So I was like, so
right.
maybe Scorsese, I can't pick him because he already kind of did this with
Right,
Casino and
he
Goodfellas.
submitted
So
an
and he
entry.
yeah, so and he's done it so many times. I mean, The Irishman was great, and I'm sure he's gonna kill it again with the new one this year.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm so excited. Gonna try to read that book before it comes out on my
Oh,
travels.
yeah, let me know how are you okay, yeah, let me know how it is.
Will do,
Do it.
will do. All right, cool. Anything else before we wrap up?
That's it. That's all I got.
Nice. All right, let's get the plugs in. Remind the people where they can find you.
All right, get your action fix and follow the show at Action Movie Buffs on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Get us to over. We're so close to 1,000 on Instagram. Please, I
Yep,
have I
working
have
on
some
merch.
I have some movie codes. So we reach 1,000, I will give some away for sure. So
Let's
get
go.
us to there. Follow me on Twitter at rampage_misfit, and my movie page is at misfit_minded. Everywhere. So yeah.
Nice. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And please leave a review 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. And you can follow me on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook at Shani B Movies. Thanks again for listening. Hope to catch you next time on another edition of Movie Buffs. Stay buff.
Forget about it.